Paleo-Hebrew, origins, use, and modern myths. Paleo-Hebrew is an ancient form of writing used by the Israelites to record the Hebrew language long before the adoption of modern Hebrew script. It is often misunderstood today, with some claiming it holds mystical or secret meanings, but historical evidence tells a much more grounded story. Where did Paleo-Hebrew come from? Paleo-Hebrew came from the Proto-Canaanite script, which was itself based on even older scripts like Proto-Sinaitic, influenced by Egyptian hieroglyphs. Over time, the Phoenician alphabet emerged from Proto-Canaanite, and Paleo-Hebrew developed as a local variant used by the early Israelites. There is historical suggestion that figures such as Joseph, during his time in Egypt, or Moses, who was raised in Pharaoh's household and educated in Egyptian wisdom, may have had a role in preserving or transmitting early forms of writing to the Hebrews. While there is no definitive proof that either Joseph or Moses invented Paleo-Hebrew, their positions in history make it likely that they influenced the literacy and record-keeping traditions of the Israelites. The decline of Paleo-Hebrew. After the Babylonian exile in the 6th century BCE, the Israelites experienced a profound cultural and linguistic transformation. During their exile and subsequent return to the land of Judah under Persian rule, Aramaic emerged as the dominant language of administration and daily life across the Near East. This widespread use of Aramaic, due to its adoption by the Achaemenid Persian Empire as a lingua franca, had a significant influence on the Jewish people. One of the most notable changes was the gradual abandonment of the ancient Paleo-Hebrew script, which had been used for centuries to write Hebrew. In its place, the Israelites began to adopt the Aramaic square script, also known as the Assyrian script, which was more streamlined and suited to the administrative and scribal needs of the time. Over the centuries, this Aramaic script evolved into the modern Hebrew alphabet still in use today. By the Second Temple period, roughly 516 BCE to 70 CE, the transition was largely complete. Hebrew itself was still spoken and written, especially in religious and literary contexts, but the script had changed. The square script became the standard for copying biblical texts and conducting religious instruction. Meanwhile, Aramaic was also commonly spoken and written, as evidenced in portions of the Bible, e.g., sections of Daniel and Ezra, and in other Second Temple literature. The older Paleo-Hebrew script, while no longer used for general writing, persisted in symbolic or ceremonial roles. It appeared on religious inscriptions, ossuaries, and notably on Hasmonean-era coins, 2nd to 1st centuries BCE, likely to invoke ancestral legitimacy and religious authority by connecting back to the First Temple traditions. The continued but limited use of Paleo-Hebrew in these contexts reflected a reverence for heritage and a desire to assert Jewish identity, especially during periods of foreign rule and cultural pressure. Thus, the adoption of the Aramaic script marked both a practical adaptation to regional norms and a deep cultural shift, while the occasional use of Paleo-Hebrew underscored a connection to the sacred past. Why Paleo-Hebrew is rare today. Genuine examples of Paleo-Hebrew are extremely rare. What we possess amounts to a limited and fragmentary corpus of inscriptions dating from the Iron Age, roughly 10th to 6th century BCE, through to the early centuries of the Common Era. Paleo-Hebrew, a script derived from the Phoenician alphabet, was used primarily by the Israelites and Judeans before the Babylonian exile. However, despite its historical significance, extant materials written in this script are scarce and generally non-literary in nature. Key Paleo-Hebrew inscriptions. The Salome inscription, discovered in a tunnel near Jerusalem and dating to the 8th century BCE, this inscription commemorates the completion of a water tunnel during the reign of King Hezekiah. It is one of the most extensive and legible Paleo-Hebrew texts, but it is not religious or biblical, it is a civic engineering record. The Gezer calendar, a small limestone tablet from the 10th century BCE that appears to be a schoolboy's agricultural calendar. It is one of the earliest known examples of Hebrew writing but contains no religious content. Ostraca, these are pottery shards bearing brief inscriptions, often receipts, letters, or military and administrative notes. Examples include the Lachish letters and the Samaria Ostraca, which, while providing valuable information about daily life and governance, do not contain extended literary or biblical content. Coins from the Hasmonean and Bar Kokhba periods. These coins, issued in the 2nd century BCE and the 2nd century CE respectively, bear short inscriptions in Paleo-Hebrew script, typically featuring names and slogans linked to Jewish sovereignty or religious identity. No biblical manuscripts in Paleo-Hebrew. Importantly, we have no complete or substantial biblical manuscripts in Paleo-Hebrew. The vast majority of biblical texts, especially those found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, are written in Aramaic square script, the precursor to modern Hebrew script, not in Paleo-Hebrew. While a few fragments among the Dead Sea Scrolls use Paleo-Hebrew for the Tetragrammaton, YHWH, or in certain select passages, possibly for symbolic or stylistic purposes, the dominant script for preserving scripture was clearly the Aramaic-based square script by the Second Temple period. This reflects a broader historical transition. After the Babylonian exile, 6th century BCE, Jews gradually adopted the Aramaic square script, aligning with the administrative and cultural norms of the Persian and later Hellenistic empires. By the time of the Dead Sea Scrolls, Paleo-Hebrew was archaic and likely used to evoke ancient authority or sacredness, not for everyday writing. Linguistic and scholarly considerations. Given the limited and non-literary nature of Paleo-Hebrew inscriptions, there is no reliable corpus of biblical text in this script that can be compared directly to the Masoretic text or other biblical traditions. As a result, claims that Paleo-Hebrew encodes secret meanings, represents a more pure form of scripture, or holds esoteric truths lost in later scripts are unsupported by archaeological or linguistic evidence. These ideas are often promoted in fringe theories but do not hold up to critical scholarly scrutiny. In academic terms, the script used to write a language does not fundamentally change its meaning. While certain symbolic associations might be made in mystical or religious traditions, such associations are not evidence of historical or textual authenticity. The substance of the biblical text, its grammar, syntax, and vocabulary, is preserved in the content, not in the shape of the letters. While Paleo-Hebrew has considerable historical value as the original script of early Hebrew inscriptions, it does not provide an alternative or original version of the Hebrew Bible. The available material is too limited, fragmentary, and secular to serve as a textual witness to the biblical canon. The square script tradition, on the other hand, preserves the only extensive and continuous textual tradition of the Hebrew Bible that we possess, including the Dead Sea Scrolls. Language change. A look at English. To understand why Paleo-Hebrew was replaced and how languages and scripts evolve over time, it helps to look at a familiar example, the English language. The English spoken today is vastly different from what was used 1,000 years ago, not just in vocabulary and grammar, but even in how it was written and spoken. For example, Old English, c. 800 CE Fader Ur, e ert on Heophonum. Modern English, Our Father, who art in heaven. To modern readers, Old English seems almost like a foreign language. It uses unfamiliar letters, like or thorn, and different grammatical structures. These changes occurred gradually over centuries due to influences from Norse, Latin, and French, as well as internal developments in pronunciation, spelling, and syntax. In the same way, Hebrew changed, not just in vocabulary and pronunciation, but in the way it was written. After the Babylonian exile, 6th century BCE, the Jews came into prolonged contact with Aramaic-speaking cultures. The Aramaic square script, which was used in the Persian Empire and beyond, eventually replaced the older Paleo-Hebrew script for everyday and religious writing. This transition wasn't abrupt or unnatural, it reflected historical circumstances and practical adaptation. Crucially, this kind of evolution is normal. It's not a sign of corruption, decline, or hidden agendas. Languages and scripts shift as cultures interact, political powers change, and communication needs evolve. Paleo-Hebrew was not abandoned out of malice or conspiracy. It simply became outdated as people adopted a more commonly used script that better fit their context. Just as we don't view modern English as a betrayal of Old English, we shouldn't view the adoption of the Aramaic script for Hebrew texts as a distortion of ancient tradition. It's part of the organic and ongoing history of language. Conclusion. Paleo-Hebrew is a historical script, not a divine or mystical code. It represents the early writing style used by the ancient Israelites, closely related to the Phoenician alphabet. It was a functional script used for inscriptions, civic records, trade, and communication, not for encoding secret truths. While it holds cultural and historical significance, it is not imbued with hidden spiritual properties. Over time, Paleo-Hebrew was replaced by the Aramaic square script for practical and cultural reasons. After the Babylonian exile, the Jewish people found themselves under foreign rule, first Babylonian, then Persian, Greek, and Roman. With each transition, they adapted their practices, including language and script, to navigate new political realities and administrative systems. The square script, used in Aramaic, the lingua franca of the region, became the standard writing system for Hebrew texts. This was a natural process of linguistic evolution, not a betrayal of tradition. Some claim that biblical figures like Moses or Joseph were the inventors or originators of Paleo-Hebrew, but there is no archaeological or scriptural evidence to support this. These associations are speculative and based more on legend or theological assumption than on historical fact. The script itself, as we know it from inscriptions like the Gezer calendar and the Solomon inscription, developed within the broader context of Canaanite and Phoenician writing systems, not as a unique invention of any one person or moment. Most importantly, there is no complete biblical text written in Paleo-Hebrew. All known full or substantial copies of biblical texts, including the Dead Sea Scrolls, are written in square script. A few fragments do use Paleo-Hebrew for the divine name or special emphasis, but they are the exception, not the rule. As a result, it is not possible to use Paleo-Hebrew to verify, reconstruct, or decode the Hebrew Bible. The idea that Paleo-Hebrew holds a pure or more original version of Scripture simply isn't supported by any reliable textual evidence. Respect for history means embracing the full story, including the shifts, adaptations, and evolutions that took place over centuries. Trying to force a modern religious or ideological agenda onto ancient writing systems misunderstands their original purpose and context. Paleo-Hebrew is rare, fascinating, and meaningful, but it is a chapter in the story, not the master key to unlock hidden biblical truths. Understanding it as such allows us to appreciate its role in the development of Hebrew writing and the broader cultural legacy of the ancient Israelites, without turning it into something it was never meant to be.